Hi everyone, I'm Don Cravins Jr., Executive Director of the National Urban League's Washington Bureau. It's good to be back with you for our Washington updates. Even though it's been some time since I've done our video blog, we have been providing our Washington updates to you every other week, and I hope you've allowed it to keep you in touch with all of the things that are going on here in our nation's capital. This week I want to talk to you about the top 5 things that you should know that are going on in Washington. By now, we've all heard about the killings of the 2 unarmed black men, Alton Sterling and Philando Castile, by police officers in Baton Rouge, Louisiana and Falcon Heights, Minnesota. These men lost their lives doing mundane things while complying with police officers' instructions, something that just simply should not happen here in the United States of America. As the National Urban League and its Washington Bureau continues to work with our partner organizations to put pressure on government to reform police policies and judicial policies, I just wanted to take this time to first express our sympathies to the families of these gentlemen, and secondly, to remind you that the National Urban League has a 10-point justice plan that addresses, in very clear terms, initiatives needed to ensure situations like Mr. Sterling's death, Mr. Castile's death, but also Bland and Rice and Garner and thousands of others. Make sure those situations never ever happen again in America. Please read our 10-point plan, learn it, and we hope that you'll believe in it and demand that your elected officials in your governments adopt the plan. The plan can be found by clicking on the link below. Interestingly enough, just a mere days before these 2 police shootings, the United States Department of Justice, headed by Attorney General Loretta Lynch, announced that it will also train its law enforcement agents and prosecutors to identify and to address their own implicit biases and how those biases affect their decisions in the workplace. The training will be agency-wide and will involve more than 23,000 federal agents and 5,800 lawyers in the 94 U.S. attorneys' offices all across America. This training is going to address hidden biases, those stereotypes, those judgments that we make when unconsciously about other people who may look differently than we do. And so we want to applaud the United States Department of Justice for doing that. We want to make sure that the Justice Department, but other law enforcement agencies do the same thing, because it's this implicit bias that usually results in discriminatory police practices. This announcement is good news for the movement, because it addresses one of the key points of the National Urban League's 10-point justice plan, which calls for training of all police officers, including a comprehensive review and redesign of basic training curriculums to integrate implicit and explicit racial bias training at all ranks of law enforcement. We've talked a lot about the terrible killings and shootings that have gone on by police, but we also have to talk about gun control and the debate that rages on here in the nation's capital. Another pressing issue is gun control. Last week we learned of another tragic mass shooting. This one involved the shooting of police officers and civilians in Dallas, Texas. Our sympathies and our prayers go out to those families as well. A month before that, in June, we were shocked by the news of the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando that left 49 people dead. That occurred almost 1 year to the day a gunman opened fire in a church in Charleston, South Carolina. Days after the Orlando incident, Democratic members of the House of Representatives, led by Congressman John Lewis, renewed the gun control debate by holding a 24-hour sit-in in the House chamber to protest the inaction of the House Republican leadership. Inaction to pass 2 very sensible gun control laws. One that would ban individuals suspected of terrorism from buying a gun. Makes sense. Seems like that's common sense. The second would require background checks before someone could purchase a gun. The types of protections you need to make sure that criminals don't purchase guns, or maybe someone with mental infirmities can't purchase a gun. Following those Democratic protests, House Speaker Paul Ryan vowed to call a vote on the anti-terrorism provision. However, that didn't happen. Those plans quickly fell apart due to the disagreement in the House Republican caucus. Although the Speaker has planned to indefinitely postpone the vote, we are encouraged to see that some Republicans may demand, and the Democrats may demand, that a vote be taken place in this week. And so we are hopeful that something will happen, But it's going to take you, the men and women who are in the communities all across America, to demand your elected officials, to demand your members of Congress take action on this gun control reform and continue to press on in this gun control debate. We've got to do something. On another note, I want to talk to you a little bit about African American small businesses and lending. And so look at our Washington update this week. We also talk about some of the very startling numbers when it comes to the amount of loans that are going to or not going to African American small businesses. You know, African American small businesses make up 9% of total small businesses. There are 29 million small businesses in America. There are 2.5 million African American owned small businesses. That's great news. However, when it comes to loans, black businesses receive the lowest total lending amount relative to their nationwide membership. Numbers released recently by the United States Small Business Administration and the Milken Institute show that SBA guaranteed loan approvals decreased by 91% to African American owned small businesses from 2009 to 2012. Let me repeat that. Over the last couple of years, loans to African American small businesses have decreased by 91% during those years. Blacks, again, are roughly 9% of the 29 small businesses, but only received 2.1%. And of all minority lending, African Americans received the least of their proportionate share of the SBA guaranteed lending. These numbers have a lot to do with the high unemployment numbers that we're seeing in many of our urban centers. And so we here at the Washington Bureau will continue to monitor that situation, but take a look at our section below where I talk about some of the solutions I think we've got to implement to increase that lending to African American owned small businesses. And finally, I couldn't let you go without talking about the upcoming elections. And although the presidential election continues to garner much of the attention, because it's a very interesting election to say the least, I want to remind you that there's some very important congressional elections that are coming up as well. Every member of the House of Representatives is up for re-election in November, as well as a third of the United States Senate. And so, although we're less than 4 months away, it's important for you to get ready for the election. Now remember, this election in November is the first presidential election, first congressional election in over 50 years that voters will not have the full protection of the Voting Rights Act. And we talk about this a lot in our communications with you. The Urban League has made this one of our priorities. While we will continue to put pressure on on Congress and our leaders to restore the Voting Rights Act protections, it is more important that you and your neighbors, your family and your friends, find out what are the voting requirements in your state. They may have changed. Find out if your state has implemented any new voter restrictions. Learn those restrictions, continue to fight those restrictions, but more importantly, make sure that you and your family and your friends, you have a plan on how you will be able to vote on Tuesday, November 8th. I don't have to tell you how important this election is for all of us. Look, that's going to do it for the top 5 things you should know. Again, please take a look at our Washington update for all the latest news happening here in the Capitol. I'm Don Cravins Jr. Thank you for what you do in and for the movement.